Welcome in once again to the most accurate podcast here at 444 Fantasy Waiver Edition. I am Matt Okada, your sole host on this every Monday morning adventure. Week 4. Wow, we're already getting to the point of the season where I start to lose track of what week it is. Week 4 is mostly in the books. Titans and Dolphins play tonight, as do the Seahawks and Lions. It's a doubleheader. So that should be a fun couple games, particularly because we get to watch Tyler Huntley for the Dolphins and what that does for the receivers there. As for the rest of the week, I feel like, I have not looked at the numbers, but I feel like scoring was up. We had some nice big blow-up games. We had some close contests. We had like a couple, I think we had one 40-point game by the Commanders and then a couple 30s. So that was very encouraging to see. We saw a few of the studs we've been rooting for all year continue to stud it up. We saw a couple other guys maybe bounce into stud territory. But we're not talking about studs here, or at least they're not studs yet. Okay, that's not true. One of them kind of is. Stick around. We are talking about waiver ads, the top 5 for week 5. Let's get straight into it. If you have questions for the Q&A, start dropping them in chat now, and I will get to them at the end of the show. So let's start it off with number 1. This may look familiar or sound familiar if you're just listening on podcast and not watching the YouTube. Bucky Irving is the number 1 ad on the week. Why does that sound familiar? Well, it's because he was the number 1 ad on the week last week. He was somewhat added in at least Yahoo leagues, 17%. His rostership bumped up last week, but that is not nearly enough. And particularly, it's not enough to get him above the 60% cutoff that allows him to make my waiver column. He's still only 52% rostered in Yahoo leagues, which means he's 48% available to be added. And I would be adding him quickly and with as much fab as you can, up to around 18, 19, 17%. That's what I have it at in the article. If you paid attention to Sunday's game against the Eagles, where the Buccaneers absolutely trounced Philly, or you looked at the snap counts somehow, if you have that data, or you read my article, you will note that he once again split snaps and opportunities pretty evenly with Rachaad White. And interestingly, in this one, finally, White showed up from an efficiency standpoint. They both had, amusingly enough, exactly 10 carries for 49 yards. White was also better in the passing game. He had 2 catches for 35 yards, whereas Bucky Irving only had 1 for 6. So it is very clearly still a hefty split. And we actually had some water thrown on the Bucky Irving hype last week by head coach Todd Bowles. Now, it's worth noting Irving was also dealing with an injury heading into Sunday, which he played through. I believe Rachaad White was maybe also dealing with an illness, so both of them maybe weren't 100%. That being said, last week Todd Bowles said that the Bucs would use both running backs all year and that White's prior ineffectiveness was more on the blocking than on him in particular. So all of that pretty significantly caps Bucky Irving's upside, barring injury. However, it is worth noting he got the goal line carry in this game, scored on a 1-yard run over White. It's also worth noting that he's had several decent fantasy games playing in a complete snap share with Rachaad White, or a minority share with Rachaad White. So he's flexible, especially as bye weeks start to hit, which they are going to next week. He is flexible, but also he remains one of the best handcuffs in fantasy because, as we've seen, he's shown he is an extremely talented player who can get a decent workload and be good. So I think he could get a full workload and be quite good. So Bucky Irving is a priority ad. Also worth noting, by the way, buys next week: Lions, Eagles, Chargers, Titans. So that's something to keep in mind. Number 2. Let's go to number 2. Surprise! It is another deja vu week 4. No, yes, week 4 repeat. This is the week 5 waivers. It is Braylon Allen at number 2. Very similarly to Bucky Irving, he was in the very top of priority in my column last week and in this show last week, but he was not heavily added and remains at 53% rostership in Yahoo leagues, which means just like Bucky Irving, he is available to pick up in nearly half of Yahoo leagues. Now, I understand a lot of you might play in deeper leagues where neither of these guys are available. Don't come at me in the comments. The reality is, most leagues in the world, despite how much it feels like, we all play in, or a lot of people in this industry or who subscribe to 4for4 play in the deeper, fancier, more competitive leagues. Most of them are 10-team work leagues that don't have Braylon Allen and Bucky Irving picked up. So this is important for those leagues and those players. Braylon Allen is a must add. Both of these guys should be like 80+% rostered. On Sunday, the Jets Broncos game was absolutely hideous. It was raining for, I think, the entirety of the game. Both offenses were inept, horrid. Everything looked bad. Braylon Allen might have been the best looking thing on the Jets, and he just had 8 carries for 34 yards, which isn't that impressive. However, Breece Hall had just 4 yards on 10 carries. So that was much worse. As I said, everything looked bad there. Rodgers was constantly being pressured and or sacked. And the final score was 10-9 Broncos. So it was a horror show. It's worth noting, as with Bucky Irving, Braylon Allen is not going to supplant Breece Hall by any means. He is not going to take the job. I don't think he's even going to get to a 50-50 split. On Sunday, it was 24 snaps to Breece Hall's 50, so it's more like a 2-1 split. But like Bucky Irving again, he has shown some flexibility, capital flex ability, through the first few weeks, as in you can probably play him, especially as bye weeks start to hit. And then, more importantly, he is probably not just one of the most, but the most valuable handcuff in fantasy, because it seems very clear that he would get the full job if anything happened to Breece Hall, and that he would be good with it based off what we've seen so far. So once again, an absolute must add. Even if you're in a shallower league, you should have a bench spot available to stash one of these two guys. Play them through the bye weeks when you need a flex, and then if something happens to the running back ahead of them, you suddenly have a potential RB1 rest of season. So they need to be picked up. Grab both those guys. Pickup number 3 in priority is Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby was in the week 2 waiver article after a very explosive week 1, but then he actually ended up missing week 2 and played just 7 snaps in week 3 due to an injury. So he's all the way down at 11% rostership in Yahoo leagues. That is silly goose stuff. He should be rostered in probably more than half, maybe almost as many as those other two guys we just mentioned. He, again, is splitting work, obviously. He played just over half as many snaps as Travis Etienne on Sunday, and had 6 fewer opportunities than Travis Etienne on Sunday. However, it is worth noting, and this is what we saw in week 1 that had him in the week 2 waiver wire column, he was amazing. Looks much more explosive than Etienne. Looks more explosive, honestly, than most of the running backs in the NFL. This is not even a dig on Etienne. He totaled 90 rushing yards and had a 58-yard breakaway run. He has had several huge plays this season. That was all on 7 carries, by the way, so he averaged 12.9 yards per carry. Obviously, that's not something we're set to expect moving forward, but Travis Etienne, 11 carries for 50 yards. Honestly, very solid. Like I said, this is not a dig on Etienne, but Bigsby has shown the ability to be a game breaker, which means, again, he can be potentially flexed given the fact that he doesn't need that much work to be productive for fantasy. And then once again, probably I would say behind Braylon Allen, maybe ahead of Bucky Irving in the handcuff rankings. He is one of the best handcuffs in fantasy. Would absolutely, in my opinion, step into a bell cow role should anything happen to Etienne. And it is worth noting that Travis Etienne was already dealing with a shoulder injury on Sunday. He was in and out of the game. So, but Tank Bigsby should absolutely be rostered. Remember, when we're talking about these guys, I know it seems like we're spending fab budget or high priorities on someone who's not even going to play for our team. Just remember what Jordan Mason is doing right now. You could have a Jordan Mason. You could have the next Jordan Mason. I understand the chances aren't high because we need an injury, but they are possible, and these injuries happen all year, every year. We've certainly seen it this year. So pick up Tank Bigsby. Reminder, if you've got questions and you are in the lives, throw them in YouTube or Twitter chats, wherever you are, and we will get to them at the end of the show. Let's get to pickup number 4. It is another holdover from week 4. That's right. Week 4 had a ton of great pickups that apparently nobody wanted to go all in on, so they're all still available. So we are here to talk once again about Sam Darnold. How? Well, I would say I don't know, but I do know. It is Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell is how. Last week in the column and in the show, I said that my belief, my fixometer on Sam Darnold was at around a 7.9 out of 10. I've seen everything I need to see. It is a full 10 for Sam Darnold. Kevin O'Connell has taken a guy that many people obviously believed would be extremely productive, talented franchise quarterback back when he was drafted, and then saw his entire career go down the toilet thanks to two of the most, I was about to say garbage franchises, but I don't want to insult the Jets and Panthers fans. Two of the most QB unfriendly franchises, let's say it that way, in the entire NFL. He was awful in New York. He was awful in Carolina. And we basically wrote him off as a bust and tossed him out the window. Minnesota did not. They said, you know what, let's try this guy. Though in fairness, they also drafted J.J. McCarthy. I'm pretty sure that they believed J.J. McCarthy would be their starter and Sam Darnold would be a very capable backup. So even the Vikings, I know that Aaron Jones said in a post-game presser, yeah, we all believed that Sam Darnold was this guy. We're not surprised at all, even though the rest of the world is. I don't know if I fully believe that. I think a lot of Vikings are probably surprised by just how good Sam Darnold is, hence the reason he came in to be a backup primarily. Or at least was very soon going to be a backup, but McCarthy took over. Regardless, he is playing unbelievably. There might have to be a 30 for 30 some point about the career transformation for Sam Darnold. He has been one of the most efficient passers in the NFL. He is the touchdown leader right now and is on pace for 47 passing touchdowns. Against the Packers, who are a good defense, though they didn't have Jair Alexander. I will point that out. Worth noting. Against this Packers defense in a divisional rival game, he was 20 of 28 for 275 and 3 touchdowns. He did finally throw a pick. So, do with that what you will. I don't think the old Sam Darnold pick machine's coming back. He also had 7 carries for 15 yards, by the way. He can move every once in a while. We'll probably see a rushing touchdown or 2 over the rest of the year. But we don't even need them because he's throwing, honestly, like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Jordan Addison was back for this game and immediately caught a touchdown, also 72 yards. It was his first game of the year. So that's another weapon to add to Sam Darnold's repertoire. And TJ Hawkinson should be back probably in about 3 to 4 weeks, it sounds like. That is suddenly adding one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the NFL to what is already an extremely effective receiving core between Justin Jefferson, who's obviously one of the best in the league, Jordan Addison, who honestly might be one of the better twos in the league, especially when it comes to scoring touchdowns, Jalen Naylor, who has popped up, who scored a touchdown in each of the first 3 games, didn't get one in this game because Addison is back and it went to him. So I think we can expect Naylor to kind of fall off a bit fantasy-wise with Jordan Addison back, but still a very talented young player who has been playing very well for Sam Darnold. And then Aaron Jones is a very good receiver. He had 4 catches for 46 yards this week, and of course J.J. Hawkinson coming back. It is just a absolutely beautiful turn of events, situation, outlook for Sam Darnold. He is a must-start quarterback one. He is absolutely a top 10 guy rest of season. Unless you have a top, I'd say probably 6 to 8 guy, you should absolutely be adding Darnold. And honestly, if you don't have a top 8 to 10 guy, you should probably just drop your quarterback for Sam Darnold, unless you have tons of bench spots or in a very deep league, in which case Sam Darnold's probably not available. He is a roll him out every week quarterback one. Now, one thing to note. Next week, they get the Jets. Obviously, one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting matchup on the entire slate for Sam Darnold. He will be playing one of the best secondaries in the league, better than what he faced in Green Bay this past week with Alexander out, because the Jets obviously should have both of their top corners, and just generally speaking, they have a great defense and a great secondary. So this should be the best test of the year for Sam Darnold. If he comes out the other side of this, we're going to be talking about him as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Forget fantasy. But of course, also it carries the revenge game narrative. He will be facing the team that drafted him and then basically ruined his career, or tried to ruin his career before Kevin O'Connell came in and saved it. So this is going to be a super fun one to watch. I will absolutely be dialing into Jets Vikings next week. We will see what Sam Darnold does. But he should be added for sure. He should be rostered in every league. Let's get to the last of the top 5 pickups. It is another quarterback. Now, I understand that a lot of you play in 1 QB leagues. You're saying quarterback's not that high of a priority. I have a decent starter. Why won't you give me some receivers? Well, I will tell you. You can get a ton of wide receivers by going to the article, which is published right now. Use the promo code YouTube at 444.com/plans, and you can subscribe to 444 and get the waiver wire column. And then you'll see a ton of wide receivers. However, I believe Justin Fields is more valuable than not only most of, but literally all of the wide receiver pickups this week. Because like Sam Darnold, I believe Justin Fields has locked himself into rest of season QB1 status. Russell Wilson is not getting his job back. I said this last week, and I will repeat it this week, especially in light of the fact that Justin Fields finally lost. The Steelers are now 3-1. He did not go undefeated through this stretch. I don't know if Russell Wilson is healthy yet. B, if he is healthy, I don't know if he or the Steelers want him to play at all. C, despite the fact that the Steelers lost, Justin Fields was honestly not the reason. The Pittsburgh defense gave up 27 points to the Colts, mostly with Joe Flacco in a relief because Anthony Richardson left the game. So honestly, it's more on the defense. And meanwhile, Justin Fields completed 65% of his passes for 312 yards and a touchdown, and he added 55 yards and 2 touchdowns as a rusher, which is not something that Russell Wilson is likely to ever accomplish again in his career. Looks like Fields is building a better and improving rapport with George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, so I think his passing numbers can continue to get better, but his rushing numbers are honestly what keep him in contention for QB1 status, and will continue to do so for the rest of the season. It is worth noting, as of right now, Monday morning, he is the QB1 overall in week 4. And with Will Levis, Tyler Huntley, Geno Smith, and Jared Goff left to play on Monday Night Football, I think we can say with some confidence Justin Fields is going to be the number 1 quarterback on the week. Obviously, that is off the back of 2 rushing touchdowns, so it's not going to happen all the time. But he has the rushing ability to consistently put up 10 points a week on the ground. And all he needs to do is add, 200 yards and no touchdowns, and you're at 18 points. That's very easy to do. And he does anything better than that, and you have a top 5 week. So Justin Fields is basically one of the safer QB1s, in my opinion, as long as he's the starter, of course. I am at a point where I'm saying it's a 10% chance that Russell Wilson ever comes back and takes this job, barring an injury to Justin Fields. So with that in mind, I'm basically trusting Justin Fields as a QB1 rest of season. I think he should be added. And that is the top 5 waiver priorities of week 5. Briefly, I did not hit on the fab budget, so I will quickly run through them. Bucky Irving and Braylon Allen, I think I did hit it on Irving, but Bucky Irving and Braylon Allen should both be somewhere around 17 to 20%. I'm investing heavily in those guys because they're better running backs than you're going to get anywhere on the waiver wire for the rest of the season, unless some other starter gets injured and their backup happens to be good, and then you're going to be paying even more than this to pick them up. So this is getting a couple guys who can be played now and will eventually be huge discounts if they get run as the starter for some reason. And then Tank Bigsby, I have at 6 to 7% of your fab budget. Basically, he's those first two guys, but light. So I'm not as willing to bid heavily, and I think you can get him for 6 to 7 just based off the fact that he's not as heavily rostered already. Just 11% rostered, so you should be able to get him. Sam Darnold, he's lower in priority because he's a quarterback, but if you need a quarterback, you actually can bid a higher amount than you would for Bigsby. I have it around 10%. So if you are in need at quarterback, I would go in on Sam Darnold with some pretty significant investment. And then Justin Fields, I have back at around 6 or 7%, pretty equal to Bucky Irving. So those are the fab bids. Again, the waiver wire list, Irving, Allen, Bigsby, Darnold, Fields. And then for the rest of it, and it is a large one this week, or at least there are a lot of intriguing names, go to 4for4.com/plans, subscribe to 4for4, use promo code YouTube, and you get 25% off to that subscription. And get the whole list. There are many. There are, here's a little fun note for you. Xavier Legette is in my top 10 overall ads this week. He had a great week on Sunday with, of course, Andy Dalton in a quarterback. Had you read the entirety of the waiver wire column last week, you would have found Xavier Legette down in the sneaky ads at a wide receiver position. And you would have gotten him for literally pennies. Now he may cost a little bit more in terms of fab because he had a big game on Sunday. So just a little selling point there for why you should get the waiver wire column. Let's hop into the Q&A. Again, if you are in the chat, drop some questions in there. We will make our way through. Starting off with Chad Gordon. Who is a wide receiver in Kansas City that we want? Obviously excluding Xavier Worthy. For anyone who doesn't know, this question is being asked because Rashee Rice suffered a knee injury on Sunday that by all counts, and I said it the second I saw it happen, looks like a torn ACL or something of that nature that will keep him out either for the entirety of the season and maybe even into next season, or certainly for the majority of this fantasy season. Absolutely sucks. Rashee Rice was playing like one of the best wide receivers in fantasy. I had just traded for him in the Dynasty League. This is awful. We go from having an elite guy to, and this is the beginning of the answer to your question, Chad, I don't think anyone great in Kansas City. Obviously, with Rice out, you've got Xavier Worthy there. He did have a big catch on Sunday, but he had not done that much consistently for the majority of the season, and feels like his role won't change much with Rice out. It feels more likely to be the case that he just stays as what he is, which is a big play, a speedster. There's Justin Watson. I don't feel great about Justin Watson stepping up into a wide receiver 1 role or a heavy target role. He is what he is and what he has been for a while, which is every once in a while, Mahomes will find Justin Watson for a great play, and then he'll completely disappear again. But he's never consistent for fantasy. You've also got Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, and Mecole Hardman. Blech, gross, and vomit. I'm not interested in any of these guys. I'm not picking somebody up and expecting them to pick up Rashee Rice's production. So Chad asks me, what the heck, Matt? So what are we doing then? Someone's got to pick up that work. Yes, my answer, and it is speculative and risky, But my answer is that it is going to be Travis Kelce with a little help from the running backs. This would be incredible for the Travis Kelce managers because obviously they drafted him as one of the highest drafted tight ends. On Sunday, with Rashee Rice suffering an injury, he had 7 catches on 9 targets for 89 yards. It was vintage Travis Kelce. It was something we have not seen all year. It was amazing. I think we're going to get that rest of season. I think that Travis Kelce was taking a back seat because he could with Rashee Rice playing like he was. The Chiefs were winning. Travis Kelce, obviously a little older. They would probably like to keep him healthy and protected until the playoffs, which they know they'll be in, and they know they'll be in Super Bowl contention. I think that was the goal. With Rashee Rice out, I don't think they can do that anymore. I think that Travis Kelce will have to step up, be what he once was, and take 8, 9, 10 targets, 6, 7, 8 catches a game, post 70, 80 yards, and be the tight end one overall that we kind of wanted him to be coming into this season. So that is my angle on it. I think there will be different angles throughout the fantasy industry, so feel free to ask. Jump into our Friday show and ask the same question to John Paulson and see what he says. I would be curious. But that's my current opinion. I'm taking Travis Kelce. I'm not getting excited about any of the wide receivers. And then it's possible that some of the running backs pick up some of the slack. Who will it be? Great question. We did not talk about it in the waiver wire, in the main section, main chunk of the waiver wire show here because no one made the top 5 ads. But that situation is going to be very interesting moving forward. Carson Steele fumbled in this game, lost the fumble. The Chargers took a lead that they didn't give back until late in the game as a result. And then following that Carson Steele fumble, Kareem Hunt ended up becoming the lead back. He was activated for this week, and he ended up getting 14 carries, 69 yards, which was pretty great. Honestly, he looked very solid. This is bad. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably coming back next week. So they're going to have literally 4 running backs with a decently equal shot at being viable. I think the main takeaway is none of them are going to be a reliable starter, true RB1 or even RB2. Kareem Hunt might be the front runner to do that. But all this to say, I think that Pirine, who's primarily a receiver, and then Hunt, who has shown some receiving ability, and even Carson Steele, who got 3 targets in this game, all will get targets to help pick up the slack from Rice. Hunt, Steele both had 3 targets in this game. Pirine actually didn't have any, but he normally would. So that's my take on the situation. It's not great, but that's where we're at. Senor Rojo says, GM, I think that means good morning. I'm not super hip on the young slang on account of I'm an old geezer, but I will also say it means general manager, which is what we all are in fantasy. Joe Lupo says, I only play in non-snob fantasy football leagues. See? There you go. Joe Lupo, it plays in these leagues where not everybody is rostered. There aren't 14 teams, and not everyone is listening to every podcast that exists and adding all the players. So that's why these waiver pickups are so important, even when they're up at 50% of rostership. Michael Quenzel says, hi, Matt. In a deep PPR league, I have Roschon Johnson, and Swift is on the waiver wire. Wow. Should I put in a bid for Swift, or you think this is a one week boom? Thank you. Good question, Michael. So last week I talked a lot about adding Roschon Johnson. He was in the waiver wire column because DeAndre Swift had been awful, and I believed that there was a good chance Roschon Johnson could take the job. The Bears staff actually talked about giving Roschon Johnson an extended look in this game. Then DeAndre Swift apparently heard all of that chatter and said, screw you guys, I'm still good, and rushed for 93 yards on 16 carries with a touchdown and added 72 yards on 7 catches on 7 targets as a receiver. He was unbelievable. It is worth noting, during the week, the coaching staff said, this isn't really necessarily all on DeAndre Swift. There is some work to be done, on the offensive line in order to make things work. If anybody saw the hilarious clip going around on Twitter of the entire offensive line falling down at the goal line and Swift getting swarmed by, I believe it was Lions defenders. You might believe in that a bit. DeAndre Swift had been previously efficient in his career, so this was super weird. He'd also looked really bad on tape through the first 3 weeks of the season, so it was tough to figure out what was going on. All things considered, Michael, I will answer your question in a bit of a roundabout fashion. I do not know if this was a 1 week boom for Swift. I would lean towards no, it's not, and he will have other good games, but I truly don't know. However, it doesn't matter. He should not be on the waiver wire. Roschon Johnson was a pickup because we were hoping he could maybe supplant DeAndre Swift as the main back. But A, Swift is getting paid huge money, so the chances were not super high of that. It was a speculative pickup. B, Swift, again, has shown talent before, and there was always a chance that he would flash it again. Could be what happened on Sunday. C, even if Roschon Johnson took the job, DeAndre Swift would be probably used in the pass-catching game, and he would still be a good handcuff because obviously he would be the RB1 if anything happened to Roschon Johnson. So there's no good reason, barring being in an 8-team league, maybe, that DeAndre Swift should be on the waiver wire. Even then, I don't think he should. And even then, given the fact that you have Roschon Johnson, I would rather have DeAndre Swift on my roster. I just would like to also have Roschon Johnson. So if you have someone else to drop, somebody of lower priority, somebody perhaps in the drop list of the waiver wire column, go check that out. I would hold on to Roschon, but add DeAndre Swift and have both guys so that you can continue to monitor the situation moving forward. But DeAndre Swift should not be on any waiver wires. Go and remedy that. Island Boy Gamers said, is Richardson droppable now? Anthony Richardson. And follow that up with, specifically, would you drop Richardson for Goff? So Anthony Richardson had been struggling. He was obviously awful as a passer. Had some decent rushing performances, particularly in week 1 when he was great for fantasy. Then since then, it had kind of disappeared. Now he is dealing with an injury. It looks to potentially be a hip pointer or something like that. It was a hip injury. He exited the game. He tried to come back for a minute, but then exited the game, went straight to the locker room. Joe Flacco took over and was a very effective quarterback for the rest of the game, leading the Colts to a win over the previously undefeated Steelers. This is so tough, Island Boy Gamers, because there's a non-zero chance, and I think it might be more likely than not, we're waiting on, confident results, that Anthony Richardson is just back next week. And if he is, he still has that rushing ability to be a quarterback 1 on the regular. That being said, the passing was so bad that I think the floor is so low, given how often Richardson was not running the ball well, specifically over the past couple of games, that I think, yes, he is droppable. Also, it is worth noting he took the hit that gave him this injury and then another hit that re-knocked him out of the game like a couple plays later, because he is the worst quarterback in the NFL at avoiding contact. It used to be Josh Allen, but now Josh Allen seems to be much better at that, and also doesn't get hit the way Richardson does somehow. I feel like Allen just avoids those hits properly. Richardson does not. He gets blasted week in and week out. So, A, if he comes back, he could get injured again. B, somebody on that dang coaching staff needs to teach him how to avoid hits, and it is a high priority after these injuries. So I think it could happen finally, in which case he would, rush a little bit less potentially, or rush a little bit less effectively, though at least he might stay healthy. But again, C, from a passing standpoint, he has been mostly awful this year. Incidentally, by the way, he was having his best passing game, 3 for 4 for 71 yards. He had a completion percentage above 50% for once. Sorry, Anthony Richardson, I'm throwing you under the bus here. This is a long-winded way, Island Boy Gamers, of saying I think you can drop Anthony Richardson. I probably would consider dropping him for Jared Goff, depending on, A, how he plays this week or this Monday night. Again, they get the Seahawks at home. And then it is worth looking at their schedule moving forward because, as we know, Jared Goff is better indoors, better at home. Briefly pulling up their schedule, they have a bye in week 5. So you're not dropping Anthony Richardson for Jared Goff, most likely, because you can't play Jared Goff this next week. You're going to have to drop him for someone else, I think. Maybe pick up Jared Goff as a stash to play after that. Though it is worth noting, after that, he gets the Cowboys on the road in Dallas, and then the Vikings, who are the best defense in football, it seems, on the road in Minnesota after that. And then Green Bay and Houston are 2 of the next 3 games after that on the road. So he has a bye and then 4 road games out of 5. That's not great, Bob. So I don't feel great about adding Jared Goff. I don't feel great about keeping Anthony Richardson as my starting quarterback either. So go look on the waiver wire. Look for Sam Darnold. Look for Justin Fields. There's another guy mentioned in the column that you can go check out. Find another solution if you can. Joe Lupo says, the minute I pick up Sam Darnold, he will see the ghost of Leif Erikson. Yes, this does feel like it's probably the case. Once we all finally go in on Sam Darnold with confidence is when he finally turns back into a pumpkin. But that's what I would have said last week, Joe. At this point, I'm 100% convinced that he is fixed under Kevin O'Connell. He has a great offense. He has a great play caller. He has great pass catchers, and he is playing very well. Honestly, if you watch the tape, it helps with this belief because he just looks good. It's not statistical. It's not just statistical. Sam Burke says, Bucky Irving or Javonte Williams from Denver? Bucky Irving, Sam. Javonte Williams actually finally had a decent game on Sunday. He had 16 carries for 77 yards, and he had 2 catches for 3 yards, which isn't great. Also, Tyler Bidet suffered a very strange injury in this game. He seemed like he lost function in his extremities for a while, had to be stretchered off the field. But I believe I saw news this morning that he has feeling in his extremities, so should be okay. Whether he plays anytime soon is doubtful. Jaleel McLaughlin, though, still there, still getting work. Also, the Jets actually haven't been that good of a run defense this season. They've been much better, obviously, against the pass. So that could be some of the reasons Javonte finally had a good game. Regardless, there were too many bad games before that for me to trust Javonte Williams. I'd rather have Bucky Irving by a bit. Javonte Williams, I will say this as a note. Javonte Williams is probably a safer bet to be like a low-end RB3 on a weekly basis. So if you just need, if you need depth that can be started frequently, you might prefer Javonte Williams here. Though, again, Bucky Irving is startable. But if you have any interest in upside, if this guy is expected to be on your bench, I would much prefer to have Bucky Irving on my bench than Javonte Williams. So just a bit of strategy there. Jesse Driscoll says, I traded Garrett Wilson for Jordan Mason. That feels decent right now. I have Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. Wow. RBs are Achane, Montgomery, and Connor, and Hall. I think that is what you mean there. There was an and then a comma, but I think that's what you mean. Should I go after CMC? Who would you trade away full PPR? Also, Love or AR, Anthony Richardson, rest of season. Okay, so you are hurting a little more at wide receiver right now. I know that you have Puka and Kupp coming back, but that might not be for 4 weeks. So you only really have 2 strong guys there right now. Meanwhile, you have Achane, Montgomery, Connor, and if that is also Breece Hall, you have a great running back core. So I don't know if I'm all that intrigued or interested about going for CMC right now. I wouldn't trade away any of these guys straight up for CMC, I don't think, basically, is what I'll say. So there's that aspect. Again, we're probably looking at 4, 5, 6, maybe more weeks until CMC comes back. It's hard to know right now. It's kind of up in the air. But all that being said, I don't think I trade any of those guys for CMC. Maybe you can try to trade someone else on your team for CMC, make a little package. But I think you're in pretty good shape right now. And if you were trading for anything, I think it would be wide receivers you can start right now, sort of lower end wide receivers that you can start right now until Puka and Kupp come back. Puka and or Kupp come back. And then would you trade away You're asking would I rather have Love or Anthony Richardson? It is absolutely Jordan Love. Excuse me, without question, no debate. It is worth noting Jordan Love was pretty terrible through. It was about 3 whole quarters on Sunday, but then he absolutely popped off in the fourth quarter. Ended up with 389 yards and 4 passing touchdowns against the Vikings for 28 fantasy points, number 3 in the week right now. So it came in garbage time, but garbage time matters. And if Jordan Love had played really well earlier in the game, they wouldn't have needed the garbage time, but that means he would have already had the fantasy production. So Jordan Love's going to be good. Anthony Richardson, it seems, largely is not. I would much prefer Jordan Love. This guy 12 said in the chat, it's going to be Amari Cooper, fingers crossed. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this guy 12, that this was probably when we were talking about who is a wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. And I believe that is definitely the case because Jesse Driscoll followed it up with, what if Devontae Adams got traded to Kansas City, or never happening, ? Do I think Amari Cooper or Devontae Adams gets traded to Kansas City? Honestly, no. The Chiefs have had tough wide receiver situations before, and they have not done this. They have been talked about in this kind of moves, even I think specifically with Devontae Adams, and they've not done it. And what they have done is managed to, patchwork together a good wide receiver core or trust Travis Kelce and gotten the job done and won back-to-back Super Bowls without good receivers. So no, I don't think either of these guys goes to Kansas City. Could it happen? Yes. Should it happen? Maybe. I mean, if you can give up a 4th or a 5th for one of these guys and they become a 100-catch type player and, have 9 catches in the Super Bowl and you win again, it seems probably worth it. But that's a Kansas City front office choice. I don't know what they actually would have to give up in order to get one of these players. So it's hard to figure out. And then, I don't know if these teams are even really willing to give up these guys, though certainly it seems Devontae Adams is a little unhappy in Las Vegas. Amari Cooper can't get on the same page with Deshaun Watson. Whether that's a relationship thing or Amari thing or a Deshaun thing, tough to know. But I don't think either guy gets traded there. And as I said, I think Travis Kelce really picks up the slack in Kansas City. Michael Quinzel also says, please rank in target shares for Stroud moving forward. Ooh, what an interesting question. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, and Joe Mixon. I will go Collins with a clear number 1. I will go Diggs with a clear number 2. After that, it's pretty much a disaster. If Tank Dell is healthy, which is what we're assuming here, I will say Tank Dell is next, but spottily, like 7, 8 targets one week and then 2 targets another week. Whereas I think Schultz, I would probably put just after that. But really, Schultz and Mixon are 4A, 4B in the sense that both will probably get like 4 targets a game pretty reliably. If it's not Collins or Diggs, I don't feel great about it at all. Well, Joe Mixon obviously feel great about for fantasy because he's a running back. But from a receiving standpoint or receiver standpoint, I don't feel great about Tank Dell being reliable, and I really don't feel great about Dalton Schultz. In fact, spoiler alert, one little peek behind the curtain for those of you who aren't subscribed. Dalton Schultz is in the drop list. He is the only tight end who has made the drop list all year. I am done with him. Move on. Island Boy Gamer said, sorry, I forgot to mention I also have Jaden Daniels as well on my team. This is after asking, is Anthony Richardson droppable? Heck yes! Throw Anthony Richardson to the waiver wire with joy and conviction. Jaden Daniels is your QB1 every single week for the rest of the season, except the week he is on bye, and you can stream one guy for that week. Congratulations on getting Jaden Daniels. Craigslist user 12 says, 10-team half PPR. Got Hall, Connor, Mason, Etienne, Allen, Benson. Wow. And then Lamb, London, Jamo, Ferguson. Lamb, London, Jamo, and then Ferguson tight end. Trade Hurts or Love, and for who? Okay, so you have 2 good quarterbacks. Excuse me. Well, if Lamb, London, and Jameson Williams are your only wide receivers, and you need to start 2 to 3 most likely, I would probably look to trade for a wide receiver. Uh, which one do you trade? I think you need to feel out both. So don't just throw out an actual app offer. Throw out some conversations and see what managers are willing to give you for both guys. Because Jalen Hurts could go for more on name value, but Jordan Love just had the huge week. People might think that he's actually more valuable. So you want to feel out which will get you more for what you're giving up. For what it's worth, rest of season, I think I'd rather have Jalen Hurts by a hair. So if you can get more for Jordan Love, I'd absolutely do trade away the Jordan Love side there. But again, you want to feel out what you can get for either. And I would trade them for a wide receiver. I would try to get I don't know, if you can find a QB needy team that has like multiple extra wide receiver twos, I'd be very interested in trying something like that. And then Craigslist user also says, do I use waiver number 2 priority for Worthy, Pittman, someone else, or save it? This is an interesting question because of the Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson situation. If we get news before Tuesday night that Anthony Richardson is going to miss significant time, Michael Pittman becomes a much more valuable fantasy asset than he was under Anthony Richardson. I don't currently think that's going to be the case. I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to miss a ton of time. So Michael Pittman is not a huge priority for me. Xavier Worthy is also not a huge priority for me because, as I said, I don't think he's going to suddenly be getting 8 targets a game and picking up the Rice load. I think that Travis Kelce and then a conglomerate of other guys will do more of that. It depends on who else is available. If no one else is worth that number 2 priority, I think I'm probably holding rather than blowing on either of those guys, unless, again, we see that Anthony Richardson is going to be out for a while. Craigslist User 12 also says 444 subscriber, by the way. Love it and thank you. See that? That is a great review. Everybody go subscribe if you're not. Ayinde Mitchell. Please correct me if I pronounced your first name wrong. What do I do with Brandon Ayuk? Ugh. This is a good question. Brandon Ayuk had a few chances at good plays this past week, but ended up with just 2 catches for 48 yards. Well, one of them was a big play, but the rest of the game was not great. This has been super discouraging. I have said previously that I believe that these holdout guys are going to start slow, and I think that is still being the case with Brandon Ayuk. So I think I'm just holding. I don't think you can trade him for decent value right now because of how bad he's playing, unless you find someone who either believes in the name or believes, as I do, in the later season resurgence. But you need to get something decent, I think, to make that happen. So I think you're just holding for now and hoping it gets better, which I believe it will. Carlos Solis says, best defense to pick up for week 5. Well, I will say 2 things, Carlos. Number 1, I have a couple defenses in the waiver wire column, which you can read at 444.com/plans. Subscribe with promo code YouTube for 25% off. Ayo. However, the other thing I will say is if you're specifically asking for this week, our streamer content might be even more useful. We have a streamer article. We have a streamer pod. You can check both of those out. I believe the pod and the article might drop tomorrow, but don't quote me on that. Just check out 444.com. You can see when the previous ones went up, and that will tell you when they're coming up this week. Should I spoil one of them as well? You know what? Thank you for being here, Carlos, in the chat and for your question. I will reward your involvement with an answer. My number 1 pickup is the Packers. That is not necessarily specifically this week. That is just in general. However, they do get the Rams this week, which is a really great matchup. A really solid matchup, at least. Not necessarily the best, but a solid one. So I like them, and I think that they're just going to be useful rest of season, which is why I like picking them up. Notable, they get the Cardinals and Texans the next 2 games after the Rams. So that's not as nice of a schedule, but I still think they're good. And then what I will say is the Denver Broncos are my number 2 ad. They get the Raiders this week. That might be an even better stream for this week in particular. But then they get the Chargers and the Saints. Neither of those are good matchups. They get the Panthers after that, but then they get the Ravens and the Chiefs. Neither of those are good matchups. So they mostly have bad matchups moving forward. However, they have been very good. Pat Surtain is shutting down opposing wide receiver ones. He did it to Garrett Wilson again this week. And I think they'll be very good this next week against the Raiders. So those are the names, or those are the teams in my column. But again, check out the streamer content at 4for4. It's really good. Shane F asks, okay to drop Akers this week regardless of Mixon status? Good question, Shane. The drop list this week features one Cameron Akers. So yes, you can drop Cam Akers regardless of Mixon status. He has been poo-poo and disappointing in what we hoped would be a nice little fill-in spot. Augusto Kashishian. Did I also nail that pronunciation? We will find out. Maybe. My running backs are Hall. It seems like everybody has Breece Hall in this chat. My running backs are Hall, Kamara, Ford. Well, Hall and Kamara is great. Ford, don't feel great about. Nick Chubb should be back soon. My wide receivers are London, Rice, ouch, Neighbors, Godwin, Pittman, Deontay Johnson, and my tight end, Bowers and Goddard. Wow. So you basically have the two best tight ends in fantasy right now. Would you do Goddard for Dobbins? Wow, that is a tough question. Dobbins has really fallen off after a great start to the season. On Sunday, he had 14 carries for just 32 yards, which hurts. That was against the Chiefs, who have been good against running backs. Next week, the Chargers are on bye. I don't think this is enough for Dallas Goedert. Based off what we've gotten from him and the fact that the tight end position is what it is, I think you need to get more for Dallas Goedert. So I would shoot for a higher end running back who is more trustworthy moving forward. If you ask for a name, it's kind of tough to think of one off the cuff. James Conner comes to mind. No, he had a great week. No one's going to give you James Conner for Dallas Goedert. I mean, honestly, what you need to do, Augusto, is find the teams that are hurting the most at tight end who have the best depth at running back, and then offer Dallas Goedert for their, middle RB3, low-end RB2 kind of guy. I mean, I'd love to try for James Conner, by the way, but I just don't think he'll get it done. Senor Rojo says, if I wanted to trade Jerome Ford for a wide receiver, who should I be looking at? Thanks. You should be looking at a manager in your league who is utterly desperate for a short-term running back help, because if you can't find that person, you're not going to get anything or very much for Jerome Ford. So this is honestly just mostly dependent on the team that needs Jerome Ford. Go in your league, scroll through your teams, and find the people who are most hurting at running back. Someone who's had injuries, someone who's picked, who has drafted poorly and doesn't have any good starters. Offer them Jerome Ford for somebody decent. You're probably going to end up getting, I would say, like a wide receiver 3. I don't think you're going to get a wide receiver 2 by any means. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a guy that you might be able to pick up for Jerome Ford that could be decent. Maybe Devontae Adams. He's been so bad. Maybe the person is frustrated and you could do that. Probably not too likely. One interesting name, by the way, is Jerry Jeudy. He's been playing pretty well. He had 6 catches for 72 yards against the Raiders this past week. I'm not saying trade Jerome Ford for Jerry Jeudy, but I am saying Jerry Jeudy is worth keeping an eye on. And you probably could make that trade. I don't think I necessarily would. Jason Quinn says, how would you prioritize Ladd McConkey, Dontavian Wicks, and Josh Downs? Good question. These are 3 guys who are all in the waiver column. They are all in a similar fab bid tier. So it is kind of hard to ascertain which one is the best. It's worth noting what the injury to Christian Watson is. So check on the reports through the rest of today and Tuesday. But I think I would prioritize Dontavian Wicks. Ladd McConkey, I love the talent, but they're not throwing a lot there, and he's not even like the clear-cut wide receiver 1. So that's a smaller target share of a very small overall pie. Dontavian Wicks, obviously also not the wide receiver 1 by any means. He's probably the 2 or 3 at best. But that team is throwing a bunch more, and he needs less work to be valuable than McConkey because of the type of receiver he is. And then Josh Downs. I love Josh Downs if Joe Flacco is in, but if Anthony Richardson is in, I hate Josh Downs. I don't think he is the type of player that will be good with Anthony Richardson. You need the big play guys who can get most of, if not all of their fantasy points on one throw from Anthony Richardson because he has about one good throw per game. Again, sorry, Anthony Richardson, for throwing you under the bus. Also, would you drop Zamir White for Kareem Hunt, Chase Brown, or Justice Hill in half PPR? Well, I would drop Zamir White. He is in the drop list this week. Who is it for? I think I would lean Chase Brown with Kareem Hunt a close second. Justice Hill, I know he had another great game on Sunday Night Football. He did that in week 1. Maybe he's just a primetime stud. I don't feel confident about Justice Hill. I don't think he will have consistently good weeks. And if Derrick Henry gets hurt, I don't think Justice Hill takes over the running back 1 job. Whereas Chase Brown could do that if Zach Moss got hurt, and Kareem Hunt could do that without an injury. Michael Quinzel says, would you start Sam Darnold over Kyler Murray, matchup dependent? Wow. This is such a tough question because Kyler Murray just crapped the bed, excuse my language, against the best quarterback matchup in football. So it's really hard to tell what the heck is going on there. Let's just look at week 5, and I'll answer the question there and then go from there. So Darnold's playing the Jets. Again, very tough matchup, but cool revenge game. And Kyler Murray is playing the 49ers on the road. I would lean Kyler Murray there, and I think you're going to keep leaning Kyler Murray for most of the games. I think you need a really bad matchup for Kyler and a good matchup for Sam Darnold to make the swap. But I like holding on to both if you have the depth or if you have the bench space for it. Island Boy Gamer says, can you rank these wide receivers or wide receiver waivers in PPR to drop Judy for? Well, interestingly, if you can drop someone else, I might do it. Judy's been kind of decent. But Dontavian Wicks, Xavier Legette, Wan'Dale Robinson. I am going to say this, Island Boy Gamers. The priority list is exactly written out in the waiver wire column, and all 3 of those guys are in the top 10 in order. So I'm going to send you to the column for this one. I'm going to withhold the answer. It is a secret spoiler answer. Go check out the column. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. That is the point, and it is worth it. Rob H. says, any recommended defense to pick up for week 5? Okay, I answered this. Denver's on the wire for you. That would be one I would look for. Alec Bates says, someone dropped Swift last week. What is going on, guys and gals? Is he worth burning my number 1 waiver priority on, or do you think he looked good more so due to the Rams defense? Similar question to what we said before. He needs to be picked up. Using the great wide receiver 1 or the waiver priority 1 is tough. But I think you probably have to do it just because this is a guy who should be rostered in 80-90% of leagues. So, yes, I think I would do it. Ainde Mitchell says, great pronunciation. Thank you. Nailed it. Thank you. Andor, you're welcome. Jesse Driscoll says, also a 4-for-4 subscriber. See this? Island Boy Gamers? Worth. Follow the breakout receiver model. I added Sutton but left him on bench. Lol. Rest of season full PPR. Kraft or Kincaid? Tucker Kraft had a good week, and I think he's a worthy waiver wire add. He is in the column, but I am not going to drop or move on from Dalton Kincaid in order to go for Tucker Kraft. I'm trusting in Josh Allen. I'm trusting in Dalton Kincaid and rolling with that for now. Craigslist user 12 says, have Saints and Cowboys DST. Do you like either or both of these better than Packers DST rest of season? Well, I really don't like the Cowboys. They have been terrible. I don't know what's going on with them, but they've been awful for fantasy. The Saints have been pretty good, though they posted just 4 fantasy points in week 4 against the Falcons. Wow, this is tough. I think I would, yes, lean the Packers. They have been really, really, really solid. So I'm going to go Packers here. In fact, they're the number 2 defense in fantasy scoring behind the Vikings. Obviously, somewhat dependent on your format, but still. Mile High Luke says, morning all. Good morning, Mile High Luke. And Augusto says, would you do Goddard for Stevenson? Jeez. These are tough. Stevenson had 13 carries for 43 yards on Sunday. He also had 4 catches for 19 yards, which is helpful. This offense is so bad. This is going to be, I think, what we get a lot of all season, Augusto. 17 touches, but just 62 yards and no touchdown. That's not enough, again, I don't think, for Dallas Goedert. I think you need to get more for Dallas Goedert. Also, Augusto says, or Ford and Goddard for Stevenson and Dobbins. Don't really love that either. I would try to aim higher. It could be the case, Augusto, that you have been trying to aim higher, and have not been able to pull it off, and that's why you're naming these names. If so, I apologize. I still really wouldn't rather do it. I think I'd just rather hold Goddard and hope that something else crops up. But if you can, go and try to get someone better than these names, in my opinion. Like, just give a shot at James Conner, maybe Aaron Jones, someone in those kinds of realms. See what happens. And if not those guys, fall down the list a little bit, but I'd prefer to be not as far down as Stevenson or Dobbins. And Clap Nuts, great name, with what will be the last question of the show because we're at the hour mark. Trade Ladd McConkey and Stephon Diggs for Brandon Ayuk and Khalil Shakir. Full PPR. Wow. This is an interesting one because Stephon Diggs has been very good. Brandon Ayuk has been struggling. Khalil Shakir, I absolutely love. Been saying that literally since the offseason. He had 4 catches for 62 yards on Sunday Night Football. Did suffer an injury, missed a little time in the game. Not that much. In fact, I don't even know if he missed the offensive snap. I will do this. Clap. I will make this trade. I will trust in Brandon Ayuk getting better, and I really like Khalil Shakir. McConkey, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I think is just going to be like an 8-point a week, only will be usable when he scores touchdowns, and you won't know when those happen, guys, kind of guy. And I like Stephon Diggs, but I think that what you get on the other side is better. Okay, fine, Jesse Driscoll. I'll also answer your question, even though we're over time. Hee hee. 49ers or Packers as set and forget. Pretty much, barring like one of the top 3 or 4 best offenses in the league. Also, Marvin Harris Jr., if you could trade him, what player would you want in return? A very high-end RB2 at least. Or if you don't have a tight end, one of the top like 3 or 4 tight ends. Otherwise, I'm not trading Marvin Harrison Jr. Oh man, you guys are coming in with decent questions, and Michael Quinzel mentioned also a 4 for 4 subscriber, so I feel like I have to answer this. If you're not a 4 for 4 subscriber, oh, that's hard to say. If you're not a 4 for 4 subscriber, look at all the people in this chat saying they are. It is a worthwhile move. Go sign up at 4for4.com/plans. Use promo code YouTube. Michael, final question. Even if someone else throws another one in chat, you're not getting an answer, so don't do it and tempt me. In FFPC high-stake leagues, is it smart to roster 3 QBs and 3 tight ends because of waiver scarcity? 3 tight ends, I'm going to say absolutely yes because of the way the position goes. 3 QBs, it depends on the quarterbacks. If you have 1 or 2 elite guys, I don't think you need to do that. But with the tight end position being the way it is, unless you have Brock Bowers and Dallas Goedert, like someone else in this chat I think did, then you maybe don't need a third, but otherwise it doesn't hurt to have 3. All right. Great show. Thank you for all the questions. That was a ton of good ones. If you have other ones that didn't get answered, you can always hit me up on Twitter or show up to the Discord AMA tomorrow night. If you are not in the 4for4 Discord, it's a great place to be. There's tons of good content in there. By the way, Michael Quinzel with a closing comment. Thank you for answering all our questions and staying over an hour. Happy to do it, Michael. Great stuff. I will be back again in that Discord AMA tomorrow night. John and I will be back in the Most Accurate podcast on Friday. Enjoy Monday Night Football. At least one of these games should be fun. And check the waiver wire column tomorrow to see if there's any updates after these 2 games. I will sign off there. Thanks, everybody, for being here and for your questions. Have a good week.